How many times have you been dishonest or sexually assaulted and said nothing? How many times have you blamed yourself when a man has been out of line? Oh, maybe it was my fault. Maybe I just imagined it. Oh, well, it goes with the territory. This wasn't as bad as some things I've encountered. There's not a woman listening to this book who has not been verbally abused or grabbed, pinched, or fondled by someone who had no business touching her. And yet, most of us keep quiet. We say nothing. It's time that we learn to speak out and stand up for ourselves. If we don't, we will never stop this nonsense. I had an incident recently in my own home involving a couple who worked for me, a marvelous English couple who took such good care of me and my home and my animals for almost 4 years. It all started out so well, but over time little things occurred, mainly with him. They were such small things, though, that at the time I let them go. Big mistake. He became increasingly lazy and let his wife do 2/3 of the work. He began to forget that I was the employer and started to act as if the house were his. He became too familiar, like he was one of my friends. All of this slowly crept up until it developed into inappropriate behavior. I see now that I did not read the signals correctly, and I didn't keep up the appropriate boundaries. I realized that I got to a point where I was not honoring the little feelings that say that something is not right. I was beginning to walk on eggshells so that I wouldn't disturb him, to keep him in a good mood. The day after my 70th birthday party, which was a marvelous affair, I discovered that he was groping and grabbing many of my women friends. When I talked with some of them, I found out that this had been going on for over a year at various functions, but no one had told me. Once the veil was lifted, a floodgate of information poured into me. He'd been hitting on several of my employees, even molesting some of them. My personal secretary had been attacked in my own home while I was out of town. I was horrified. This was happening to Louise Hay's friends and employees. But they didn't tell me. Why? Because they were frightened. They were embarrassed. They all had different reasons. You probably know what some of them are because you may have used them yourself. I thought back to all the times in the past where I'd put up with various forms of sexual abuse and how I usually just wanted to escape from the situation and have it over with. But how many times had I actually spoken up or blown the whistle? I also came to discover that this man abused his wife and that she often carried bruises. I thought, look at the secrets we keep. Look how we let men get away with violating our space and our honor. Fear beats us into submission on every level. A great heaviness came over my heart as I listened to these tales. And perhaps it was only the tip of the iceberg. To all those women who were at my 70th birthday party, I apologize for any inappropriate behavior that may have occurred. One of my very close friends, who always shares so much with me, and who considers herself an enlightened woman with a lot of self-esteem, didn't even speak up. When dealing with an abuse issue, her first reaction was to remain silent and not make waves. In any case, while things had not felt right at home for some time, now I had something to deal with, for this man had really gone too far. I assembled a support team because there was no way I would have confronted him and his wife by myself. Even so, if I had not trusted my information so much, I could have easily been taken in by his excellent performance of total denial. When he realized I wasn't buying his story, he turned vicious and nasty. However, I not only had my support team, I also had the phone in my hand, thinking that 911 was easy to punch in. I said that I wanted him out of the house and off the property by morning. My palms were sweating, there was a knot in my stomach, and I felt a sense of power. It wasn't easy for me to stand up to a big 6'5" man who was very angry. While I had a lot of compassion for his wife, I also know that she was an enabler, and the only way she could handle his womanizing was to be in total denial or to blame those he fondled. Often when a husband is a womanizer, an abuser, the wife will keep herself in denial by making the other woman wrong. So they both came off as the innocent and injured parties. They were also packed and out of the house in 3.5 hours. My girlfriend called me the next day, incredulous, telling me that she had actually started to wonder, could I have imagined it? Could I have been mistaken? Did I cost a man his job by speaking up? We women have such a tendency to let it go, don't we? Who are we? Just girls, after all, to say anything? Sure, maybe we imagined it. We often believe the denial by the man. Our space and honor have been called into question, and yet it's our word that's doubted. The old tapes in our psyche cause us to further disempower the woman. So much denial goes on. Women have been controlled by terror for eons. We have allowed this to happen for so many lifetimes out of fear, usually justified. In the past, it could have meant our lives if we'd spoken up. Even today, there are currently 15 countries where stoning is either practiced or authorized by law as an acceptable death penalty. Oftentimes, stoning is carried out as punishment for adultery. But of course, this means stoning of the woman, rarely the man. The minute I clearly saw what was happening in my home, I took appropriate action to end the situation. I also called a good therapist and made an appointment. Even though I've done much therapy in the past, I was very aware that there must still be a part of me that attracts this behavior, not violence to my own being, but in my household. I will do whatever it takes to clear the rest of the pattern within me.